Welcome to this first of many training videos. What I want to do today is to kind of introduce you to the Martus tool at a very basic, very focused level. We won't go too deep into all the functionality. It's very much just intended to help you get familiar so that you can start playing with it. What we have done right now is Michael and I have thought about how to best, you know, train you and just get you started. And so I'll use this user here as an example. So I'm an admin, and so I will be responsible long term in making sure that behind the scenes, all the budget scenarios, any data issues, any user access, user roles, profiles, all of that is set up. My name's Thermaine, by the way. I work with Craig and the Harlan Associates team. So I focus on reporting, and my prior history in my main job is I used to be a automation manager for a couple of years. So I've implemented systems like Blackline, Coupa, Automation Anywhere. So I'm well versed with being an administrator and kind of managing this in the back end. So with that being said, I think most of you already know what Martus is, so I won't go too far into that. What I want to do is just help you get a little familiar with what you'll see. So, most of you at this point, if you're watching the video, you would have already received an invitation to log in. You set your password. So you'll log in. When you do, you basically come to this home screen. And then, you can see up here, this will kind of tell you, your username. And then sometimes you can have people that have multiple profiles. And so, if you have multiple profiles, like for example, let's say you have a profile that only lets you look at something on a read-only basis. You might, for some reason, need to be a backup for your colleague who's on vacation, at which point, we may have chosen to give you temporary access to another profile, which gives you a bit more, access. And again, that would be temporary for security purposes. And then you would be able to click here and go there. But for now, very simple. This is kind of your profile. If you need to sign out, you can click this button here. Sometimes we get stuck. That helps. And then, clicking these little 3 lines here just, expands the page a bit so you have more space. And then you can see your name. And so what I want to focus on today is, you can come here and click dashboard. You can click financials. I know it's a lot of information. It's very visual, which in the long term is great. But for the time being, I'm going to skip the dashboard. I just want to give you a little flavor. And I want to get to the planner. So within the planner, what Michael and I have done is we have created a mock pilot, you can call it a test sheet, just so you can help familiarize yourself with what the process will be when we are ready to actually go through the budgeting process, right? This is not the final budget for fiscal year 26. I repeat, this is simply a test training budget scenario. That's why it's called FY26 pilot budget. It's simply meant to get you accustomed to this. Now, on this page, you will see that you can select the year, lots of slicing and dicing. Quite frankly, I am someone that prefers to keep things simple. So the way this will work is most of you don't have more than probably 2 to 3 departments, right? A couple of you, like to me, I know she's got several departments, or I should say classes, if you use QuickBooks terminology. For the purpose of this test, I've only created one single class/department/expense type, whatever term you want to use, just so you're not overwhelmed looking at all of the information. When we get to the final budget, you will be able to see all of your, subsects. For now, it's just one. So that's why I said all of these things up here, they simply help you slice and dice, the sections down below here. But because our organizational structure is not very complex, right? You can have companies where, especially in the for-profit space, where someone might have 200 different classes or some other, dimension. And so that's where so very simple for us, make sure you select the budget that you're working on. Right now, we've only set to 1, so it's very simple. And then click on this, and then you can click this little pencil that you see here, right? And that would open up the page, and we'll get to that in a second. So the next thing to know is in this new budgeting workflow, what can you expect? So the idea with this tool is that in the past, we would have all these offline spreadsheets with version control issues where you've had some discussion with your manager, and then you maybe the version that you had didn't have a small change, but the file that you sent to accounting or Michael or someone else had that piece missing. Um, the idea now is that it's all through the tool. So every single thing will have a owner. It will have approvers. Right now, I've just set to 1 approver. In this case, again, I don't know if Rob is the actual approver, but I've just for illustration purposes, I've put him on there. You can have multiple approvers as a workflow. And so the idea is the owner will put the information in, and I'll show you how to do that. And then it will go through the workflow and get approved. Once everything is approved, the tool will automatically enable us to consolidate that. And because whatever you put in is the only thing that gets consolidated, there's no room for error. There's no room for version control issues where I don't know why QuickBooks is showing me 100 when in fact I spoke to XYZ person and we agreed that it was 90. And I had this Excel sheet that I gave to accounting, and for some reason, I don't know why QuickBooks is putting 100 on the report. So all those issues will hopefully vanish. That's the idea. Now, when you get into the actual working, um, what we've done is we've looked at the historical activity that you've had, as far as which accounts, because, our QuickBooks has a lot of accounts. Sometimes you may need to add a new account because if you have some changes in planning, you may say, I have a different type of expense that, for fiscal year 26 that is not covered here. So the first thing I wanted to teach you is if for some reason you need to add a new line or a new account, let's say, you can click line action, click add line, select the account, you can see the entire list of accounts in QuickBooks. If you need guidance, I would speak to your leader or your manager. You can also reach out to accounting if you're not sure what the purpose of a specific account is. But let's say that, since we have 6150, 6155, I'll pick something in between just for simplicity for the sake. So 6154, so I pick that. Then you'll see this. This is something that many of you are not used to working with. I would say by and large, for those of you that are primarily dealing with just expense on the P&L, you shouldn't need to worry about this restriction. You can just keep it at this setting here that says select restriction. If for some reason there is a need, like certain spend might be offsetting, restricted funds, then yes, you can select it. I would speak to your manager before you pick anything. By default, just keep it at this, which basically doesn't add any restriction. And now the line has been added. So there's 6154. Now you may say, well, I made a mistake. You can select it here, click on this line action, and just delete the line, and it will go away. Very simple. Okay. Now, we typically do zero-based budgeting, so we don't populate the values from last year. If you would like to view, reference data, you can see here it says, well, show me what 25 actuals and budget were. There is a way, if you click load, that it would load that activity. So like if I select load, there's no activity right now in this volunteer class that we're working with, but if there was, it would populate. You can also click down here and, actually, here is the comparison. So instead of populating here, if you wanted to just see, hey, I know we're doing zero-based budgeting, but for some reason, I'm just curious. I just want to see what we had last year. Maybe use that as a way to start off, that this little button here will help you. You could do actuals plus budget. You can do just actuals. You could do just show me the budget and say, okay, what was I supposed to have? And then, go from there, right? So I guess there was no budget, but we have some activity. Maybe the budget was kept at the higher level roll up for the engage department. That's probably my guess as far as why it's not showing up. But either way, let's say that you had this line here, and typically, what would you do? Well, I need to just click it. Very intuitive. Just literally click, enter, whatever. So let's say 225,000. You know, 5,000, 25,000. I mean, just straight data entry, right? And then if you press enter, there you go. It takes it. And then if you say, well, I need to wipe it, well, just click on it, remove it, press enter on your keyboard, gone. If you'd like to see some historical activity for these accounts here, you could click it. And then you can see it shows you several slices, right? You could just see, okay, in 25 actuals plus budget, it was 47.92. And I think part of the issue here is that our current budgets that we have that if there's a budget number here, QuickBooks, by and large, I would say is about 90% correct. But what we're finding is that the worksheets that were handed to the Harn team, that there's a disconnect between the summarized budgets that are being used for the board versus the underlying files. And so you may see some minor discrepancies if you're looking here being like, I don't actually remember 25 having anything here from like a budget standpoint, which you can see it's blank. So this must be actuals. But if you saw some random budget number, there are some minor discrepancies. So that's why this is just a good reference. I would typically try and do true zero-based budgeting. So I would say by and large, let's say that you've entered a lot of stuff and you just need to zero out the whole spreadsheet. You could just click this button here, right at the top, worksheet actions, zero out, this pops up and the whole sheet will be zeroed out, right? Let's say that you'd like to attach something to this for some reason. Maybe you have some working files that are the underlying basis for this here. And you just go in here, pick a file, just anything, and then attach it, and it will stay. So in the future, if you need to see, okay, what was the backup that supported all of these budget numbers, you have that. This will kind of tell you who the approvers are, and this is something that I set up. So I will be speaking to Rob and Michael for each department to see how many levels of hierarchy do we want for the approver, and who are those individuals. So you can just see them here. And the activity log just tells you, by name, who made what changes, right? In case you have multiple people working on the same budget, it just helps you keep a track of what's going on. Beyond that, let's say that you were done with all of this, right? You would basically click, submit and lock, and that would push it through to the next person, and then it would show up in their queue, and then they would review it, and then push it through, and then in the end, it would be completely done, and we would be ready to wrap the budget. There are some other functions here, like export worksheet, import worksheet. My personal recommendation is if you really have a very big, complex class or department, please reach out to me. I would tell you, I find it much easier looking at, I've gone through every single budget as part of my QuickBooks reconciliation. I don't think there's a single budget where we have a desperate need to import because we've limited the amount of accounts that we have by default anyway. And it's much easier to just do data entry, I would say, for the average user. But if you're interested, I can certainly show you how it works. It's just a little bit more advanced. There's this other thing called special purpose worksheets. Honestly, for now, I would not venture into this. This is more so it's more so for Rob and Michael to work with. We just have access for the time being, but worksheets is really where we would like you to go in, click here, play around, maybe even try submitting and locking and seeing, does this work? Yeah, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. So thank you for watching.